Hello and welcome back to Pod Popper's Place. This week is a Christmas in July craft collaboration, and this week we are focusing on something stamped. So this week I got out my Spellbinder set, Fun Stamper's Journey, and this stamp set has 14 stamps, and I used every single one except for the ornament that I didn't have a place to put. I was on a mission this week to use the stamp set to create a scene, but without having to cut out any masks. I didn't want to cut anything out. I didn't want to break out my brother's scan and cut, so I just wanted to show you how you can still create a scene just by carefully placing ink and using the stamps in a specific order. I created a card off camera so that I could figure out if this was even possible, and after doing it I figured out what I needed to kind of change a little bit, and so I'm trying to show it to you in a way that might work a little bit better, give you some better results. The first time I put the greenery down first, and the second time I'm putting the candlesticks and clock down first so that I can put ink on the greenery in places where hopefully it won't hit the other items on the mantle. I had actually wanted to use my VersaFine Moonlight Mist gray ink to stamp this so that everything would be lighter and it wouldn't be so blatant when I had black ink overlapping things, but of course that's not Copic or alcohol marker safe, so I am using my Memento ink instead, but just trying to go in with a lighter hand when I stamp. In order to put one present behind the other, I just ink half of the stamp and then I bring in the other one in front of it, and I get it pretty close. The ribbon doesn't quite reach the edge of the fireplace, and I just go in with that later with a Sharpie pen and kind of draw the lines in. And because I'm using coloring all this in, and it is going to be behind a shaker window, you really won't be able to notice these little tiny mistakes. I really like to use these fine silver paint pens. They're really good at hiding anything that you want to cover up, especially like with the ribbon and the fireplace. You do have to remember to shake them well. Once I've used the silver paint pen for all the metal pieces that I want to make silver, I get out several different greens to create a nice full wreath, and I just use the same lines that are already there and just add to those by doing it, going around and around with the different colored greens and just making it have more depth and fullness. I pretty much use the same technique for the greenery on the mantelpiece by just using the same lines and trying not to go over anything on the mantle that I don't want to cover up. And there is some extra leaves in that center candle, so I try to use some different greens to kind of make those stand out a little bit more. I'm not using a lot of alcohol markers on this. I don't want it to bleed. I don't want it to blend in. I want some more definitive lines, so I am using a lot of my regular Stampin' Up! Markers instead. I'm not showing all of my coloring here, but I did want to comment on the background. I really would have liked to have a more decorative background, but there was so much busyness going on between the stamps and the shaker bits that I just wasn't sure how that would look, and it would have been very difficult to create a background without maybe just coloring the whole thing. So if you have some ideas about how I could make that happen, I'd sure appreciate your input. I did add some gold paint to the fire because the little ash pieces that the stamp had kind of got lost after getting colored in, and so I added the gold so they popped a little bit more off. And then I also used a glitter pen to add some shine on the Christmas stockings. And then I used a lot of blending pens to color in the fireplace, but I didn't go and show that because it's nothing special. When I colored the fireplace, I did go over a little bit and make an error, so I ended up using my Stampin' Up! color lifter pen, and it's really fabulous. You can still kind of see my little error there. It's a little bit dark still, but I go over it again a little bit later after it dries. You don't want to saturate it too much, it'll start to bleed, but it does work really well to take off some of that color when you make mistakes like that. I added some shine with a Nuvo sparkle pen, and then as I get ready to make the window for the shaker, there was a couple things I wanted to change from the first one I tried. The window was a little bit wide and it just blocked a lot of the scene, so I decided to go smaller. So instead of a 1/2 inch border and I believe 1/4 inch inside panels, I went with a 3/8 inch border and 1/8 inch for the inside panel frames. Another couple changes I made was the first one had a heavy duty acetate for the window, and then the strips of paper that made the panels was on the inside of the card, of the shaker card, rather than the outside. And why I didn't like that was because the shaker bits could actually catch on those strips of paper. So the second time I glued the window together first, and then I used actually packaging acetate, keeping it very thin and lightweight. I used double-sided tape to put the sheet down, and then I trimmed around it, and I probably should have trimmed it first because I did have some issues with the scissors getting close enough and getting it trimmed properly, but it did finally get cut properly. And then I used some thin foam tape doubled up to create the window, and I put the bits inside the window, and I really should have just put them on top of the picture, as I go ahead and do that later. I did use some of these little beads. They're really great for shakers, especially ones that aren't super thick, so that they can still move things around a lot. And I was trying to be careful with how much I put in, because it sometimes, things get stuck or they don't move as well. And it actually came together fairly well. So I did want to use the sentiment that came with the set. It says warm Christmas wishes, but I really didn't want to cover up the window, so I decided to try it both ways. I did some heat embossing with some gold embossing powder, and I cut it out with a Stampin' Up! Frame, and I put one on the inside of the card and I put the other on the outside. I really like how it looks on the outside. I just think it's kind of a shame that it covers up so much of the lovely scene inside the window. And then I felt like the one card with the sentiment inside, the outside was just kind of too plain. So I found these leaf dies from Spellbinders, and I created some leaves with that, and then I just colored them a little bit so that they were a little bit darker, because I didn't like the green color of the paper I'd used. And I just used some red sequins as berries to kind of make them look like holly berries. Now the leaves are totally wrong, I understand, for holly berries, but I just wanted to give it a little something on the outside to just spice it up a little bit. It just seemed a little bit plain. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found some inspiration to get crafty for Christmas. I would love it if you would subscribe, and it would be great if you would see everyone else in the hop and comment and like their video projects as well.